Welcome to week 1 at pseudocode. We will be working the algorithm for residential and commercial controllers. So without ado, let's get right into it. So this week we had as a mission to actually write the algorithm for residential controller, which is obviously object-oriented class. So we had, as a setup columns, we had one column for the residential, 2 elevator, call buttons, 10 floors, door function, and floor request buttons. Now I've broken this down into a couple classes, which are actually called using define, and sequences can be referred as function. Now in my define, I have the column, which uses ID, status, floor amount, and elevator amount, which creates, within that I create an elevator list, I create floor button list, and an elevator idle position, and a request elevator function, which are all going to be put to the test throughout the algorithm. If you move to the elevator, it uses ID, floor position, and status. I have a safety sequence for different safety issues. Create an elevator panel buttons list for inside the elevator. The request landing is where you requested to land from using that elevator panel button within the elevator. Move elevator function, which is very important to tell it where to move and how to move. A check weight capacity, which is part of my safety features. Set elevator status for its base. Sequence for opening the door, which runs actually when you call, it's like as if you were running a function. So I'm calling the closer within that one after a certain time. With the call button, I define the call button using direction, floor call button. Get best elevator. That's one of the biggest logic that we use within this. It also uses elevator inbound, which tells me which elevator is coming towards me, which one are in the same direction, and calculating the distance of an elevator. So that's probably the most complex function or sequence I have, but it actually makes sense and it works, so I'm very happy for that. Now, if we were to run a very quick scenario on this, I would initiate a new column with ID as 1, status as online, 10 floors, and 2's elevator. I would set my first elevator from the column elevator list of floor position to 2 and status idle. Set the elevator 2 of column elevator music to floor position to 6th floor, status idle. If someone is on the 1st floor wants to go to the 7th floor, call request elevator is being processed as a function with the attributes of 3 and up, which would just send the elevator down. And once inside the elevator, it would request a landing using the panel buttons by pressing 7. If we could do a console log from the get best elevator function, we would be return the elevator 1. So that basically covers my residential. For the commercial, I went for the modern aspect of things. So we have a battery, 4 columns, 3 elevator per columns, a call button used serving 66 floors, doors for request buttons, and so on. Now this one is a little bit different since modern only the elevators only serve certain columns, so we'll jump right to that to start. So find column using floor mount, which are, so from the basement returns the first list, the second will go from the second column, the third column, and the 4th column, and so on. Now the main difference also is that the battery controls the columns and the columns controls the elevator. In this function, as soon as I initiate a battery, I will also create a columns list. So the list of the column will create themselves upon the battery, which will also create elevators right upon that. So we'll find the same sequence more or less, except the column floor display, which will return an ID to the user once he requests an elevator from the main floor. I also have a function for a schedule from Monday to Friday, from which time to which time to where the elevator will be located. Now, as I mentioned, once we create a column, you also create an elevator list from the data that was inputted at the beginning. we find a request elevator idle position once again. For the elevator, we have the request floor, move elevator, check weight capacity, pretty much the same thing, just reorganized a little bit differently. And if we were to run a scenario on this, once again, initiate new battery with 1 on 4, 3, and minimum lists. These would be my lists. And if we could have a console log, we would have elevator 3. So hopefully you'll enjoy going through this. It was a pleasure to present you my week 1 project. Thank you very much.